Good morning, and welcome to the Upgrading to Shavlik Protect 9.0 webinar. Today we're going to be covering the upgrade from the vCenter Protect 8X versions up to Shavlik Protect 9.0. This webinar is geared towards existing customers who are looking to upgrade and want to know a little bit more about the upgrade experience and things to watch out for. It's kind of a good way to just walk people through it so they understand any of the changes that are going to be coming and how it may impact them. That way you don't get halfway through the upgrade and hit something that's a surprise to you that you may not have been prepared for. We're going to go through the upgrade process. I'm actually going to do a live upgrade from 8.0.2, the VMware branded vCenter Protect product, up to the Shavlik Protect 9.0 product. And we're actually going to do an upgrade from a 32-bit to a 64-bit edition as well, so you can kind of see how seamless that is. So we'll go through a few details there. We'll walk through the upgrade guide and a product demonstration of the upgrade, and then we'll have some time for some questions and answers. One thing, just to touch on it really quickly, on Tuesday, we had an Introducing 9.0 webinar where we actually covered the new features of the product. We may talk about those a little bit here, and I'll answer any questions that people may have regarding those, but this webinar is geared more towards the upgrade itself rather than the new features. So at the end of the webinar, I'll also go back and point out where you can go and view the replay or the playback of that Tuesday webinar, which is up on our webinars page now. Okay. So the first thing, downloading 9.0, it's the same as our product has been for years now. Many of our long-term customers since before the VMware acquisition are aware of how to get to www.shavlik.com/downloads.aspx to get the download of where you can get the download of 9.0. For those customers who joined us in the VMware time frame, you can actually get the download of the product either through the VMware page that is all updated and is now available to download 9.0 of the product, or you can go to the Shavlik.com download page. They're both the same installer, so you'll not have any issue running either one. The upgrade guide that we're going to use for today's presentation, you can get that off of our online help. Again, if you go to the main page, and at the bottom, you click on, switch over to my browser here real quick. From the main page, if you go to online documentation and click on the upgrade guide, that's what we're going to be walking through today. It's a great way to get a very quick read on anything that may have changed for prerequisites, for permissions, anything else that could have changed that could be affecting your upgrade. So we'll walk through that here in just a moment as well. As we go through the presentation, if you do have any questions, use the Q&A feature of WebEx, and towards the end there, I will go through and answer as many questions as possible. We should have ample time to get through any questions that come up, and then any questions that I don't get to for some reason, I will ask that you include your information and email address as well if you didn't on logging in, and I'll be able to respond back to you via email with any follow-up questions that we don't get to on the live webinar. All right. So actually, I'm going to start stepping through the product upgrade and the upgrade guide here. So there's several things that, actually that's the downloads page. Let me go back here to the upgrade guide. So there's a few things that I wanted to cover before we actually get into the upgrade process. There should not be anybody in this case anymore since this was end-of-life already, but anybody who is on a 7X version, you would have to upgrade to the latest version, 8.0.2, before you could upgrade to 9.0. But any 8X version, so 8.0, 8.01, and 8.02 will all be able to upgrade directly to 9.0. System requirements-wise, there's a couple of prerequisite changes that may come up as you go through the upgrade process. The introduction of PowerShell 3.0, we have the ability to upgrade PowerShell on the console machine for you during the prereq install. for operating systems that support that. For operating systems prior to, I believe, Vista, you'll still be running PowerShell 2.0, but the IT script feature is backward compatible, so we could support 2.0 and 3.0. So during the upgrade process, don't be surprised if you see PowerShell 3.0 as an available prerequisite. The other prerequisite that you will notice is new to this release is the Shavlik Protect product itself is now a prerequisite within the installer. This is because of the 32-bit and 64-bit editions that we now have available. So if you're on a 64-bit operating system, you're going to see the Protect installer as a prerequisite. We're going to detect that the 64-bit is the one you want, and it will automatically grab the correct version of the installer and install it for you. So 32-bit OSs will get the 32-bit installer, 64-bit OSs will get the 64-bit installer. You will no longer be running a 32-bit install on a 64-bit OS. All of that is seamless during the upgrade, and we're actually going to walk through that right now and show you how that works so you understand the difference there. Permissions-wise, for most of you this shouldn't be a problem, but if you do happen to lock down the permissions on your database a lot more strictly, these are the roles that your account would need to be a member of when you upgrade the database. So there's details in here about that. So if you need to include your DBA, just let them know in advance what permissions you need, or have them come over during the upgrade process to be able to supply the credential you'll need to upgrade. So performing the upgrade, one thing that we've always recommended doing is, when you perform the upgrade beforehand, it's always good to, go through, do some database maintenance. If you're not using the database maintenance feature within Protect, we've got some details here on running the, the proper maintenance tasks to reduce the size of the database before upgrade. In the upgrade guide itself, you'll also see the link to the downloads page so you know where to get the executable file again. One thing that is a little bit different with this release is we've actually got two different installers now. And this is a difference that I was going to call out here just so people are aware of what this means. The web installer is basically a stub downloader that's going to download all the prereqs and actually the addition of Protect that you'll need as well. So that's why this is only 1.15 megabytes. The actual installer itself will be downloaded during the prerequisite check process and installed at that time. The full installer, this is for our disconnected customers. So in anticipation of customers who are running in a completely disconnected environment who need to download the full installer, this actually includes the 32-bit and the 64-bit installers. When you run it, it will still do the prereq check, and it has everything contained within to be able to install the right edition. So that is the difference between those two installers. Otherwise, the upgrade process is quite a bit like all previous ones. Again, the prereq installer is going to check prerequisites on the machine. For things like the PowerShell edition, SQL edition, the Protect installer, 32-bit or 64-bit, we're going to check all those, and we're going to provide the right prerequisite for the operating system that you're on. PowerShell 3.0 is not available to some of the older operating systems, and if you're on 32-bit, we're going to obviously give you the 32-bit installer. If you're on 64-bit, we'll give you the 64-bit installer. So we'll take care of all the evaluation there and get you the right editions of each of the components. A bit of changes to the folder and registry structure. For brand new installs, the registry and file system will all be set up under a LAN desk folder structure and registry structure with the Shavlik Protect product underneath that. For upgrading customers, depending on if you've got a unique path in there previously, the registry will be set up under LAN desk, but the file system may be under Shavlik instead of LAN desk, depending on your upgrade progress throughout, how many versions back that your install went and differences in implementation. So if you happen to see that the folder that you're installed under happens to be a Shavlik folder instead of a Landesk folder, it's not a huge issue. It's just a matter of the upgrade path that we chose to take was, least impactful to each of the different configurations we expected to encounter. The database setup tool that you will run through here as well is very similar to what it was before. There's no need to really do anything other than continue through that process and upgrade the existing database. Go through my notes here real quick. The data rollup for customers who are using the data rollup feature. One quick note about that. When you go through the upgrade process, you will have to reconfigure the data rollup in this case, and that's because we actually, as part of some of the features that we upgraded here, we updated some of our security features. So you'll see a notice in here when you begin the upgrade process. It's going to basically stop any data rollup activities between consoles. Once you've upgraded all consoles, you'll have to reestablish the data rollup synchronization, and that's because the encryption that we're using for the data rollup process is using a stronger level of encryption now. So you do have to regenerate that console file and reconfigure each of the rollup consoles to be able to pass that data up. So that's one that we unfortunately couldn't make significantly easier for our customers, but it was still in our best interest to go through the process of upgrading our security level there to give the utmost security possible for the data rollup feature. The last section of the upgrade guide is going to go through the new features of the product, just to give you a quick what's new list of the product. Again, we're going to focus more on the what's changed between existing features between the two products and cover less of the actual brand new features of the product. If you do have some specific questions, again, post those and we'll talk about them towards the end. All right, I'm going to actually go through an upgrade. So right now, my console that's running is the VMware vCenter Protected Advanced Edition. I'm going to go ahead and close my console, and I'm going to run the install. The first thing that occurs, and this is very specific to the customers that are on a 64-bit OS, the first thing you're going to see when you go through the upgrade process is it's going to prompt you and tell you that you're on a 32-bit edition. We're going to uninstall that and immediately install the 64-bit edition instead. Your settings and data will be upgraded. You don't have to worry about any of that. We'll take care of all that for you. But just be aware that's what this question is for. So say yes to that. And you're going to see that it's going to be uninstalling the current 32-bit edition, and then we'll get to the prereq installer. And you can see here the prereq installer has now come up, and it's looking at my system. Now, I already have PowerShell 3.0 upgraded on this machine because I actually had 9.0 on here before. But if you were upgrading and did not have 3.0 already there, you would probably see this as a missing prerequisite as well. So when I click install here, it's going to go through and it's going to grab any of the updates or prerequisites that it needs. So right now it's going through, and I'm using the web installer here just so you can see how that works as well. It's going to connect up and download only the 64-bit edition, which instead of the 153 meg file that's available in the full installer, it's only the 80 meg installer for the 64-bit edition. And while that's downloading here, I'm going to address a couple of questions that came in about the 64-bit edition already. So the first question here was from Kevin. Will there be a problem with licensing by uninstalling the 32-bit and reinstalling with the 64-bit? No. The as you go through that, just like previous upgrades, the licensing should all be carried over, and it'll re-register those licenses under the 9.0 edition once it's complete. The next question is from Tim. Does the 64-bit version perform better than the 32-bit version? So Tim, yes. Some of the, especially for those customers who are running much larger scans and deployments, the memory utilization is more efficient there. The UI is a bit more responsive as well. But yes, in general, the 64-bit version will perform better. Next question is from Jeff. If we have more than one console, do they all need to be upgraded at once or at your leisure? So Jeff, this is kind of a complicated question depending on how you're configured. If you're running multiple consoles with a shared database, I would recommend shutting all consoles down, upgrading the console from the first one that you connect to, and then upgrade all the others before you connect them back up. If you don't, there could be some compatibility issues just because some of the schema has changed. But in general, though, if you've got multiple consoles, you want to upgrade all of them before you actually perform any additional actions on each of those individual consoles. If you are running multiple consoles and have the data rollup feature, as I talked about before, you'll want to upgrade each of the consoles. Their database will be upgraded, and then you'll want to reestablish the data rollup connection once the upgrade is complete. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue through here, and we will come back to some more of the questions here in a little bit. So the installation of the product itself now or the download is complete, and we're going through the install process now. And most of this is going to be exactly like you've seen before. One of the major differences is now the EULA that you're accepting is a LANDESK EULA. So since the acquisition now, you'll see that the product is rebranded back to Shavlik and has LANDESK, EULA, and copyright. So just so that everybody's aware, that difference does exist in the install process. I'm going to go ahead and accept this and hit next. The file structure here, in my case, is able to install under the LANDESK folder, so I can just let that install the way it's proposing there. If you want to agree to participate in the product improvement program, this just feeds us anonymous data about your environment so we understand feature usage and other things that we can use to help guide future product development. So it's very helpful for us to understand our customers better. And then I'm going to go on to the product install itself. Should be onto the database step here in just a moment. There we go. And again, very similar to how we have this, this has been working for quite some time. There's only one minor difference here that kind of threw a couple of people off in some of our usability testing, and that is the back button on this step is actually following some of the more, Metro-style, app design where you've got the back button actually up at the top there, is where you'll find that. So if you do want to go back a step during this process, that's where that back button is. So I'm going to use my existing database. That way I upgrade the current database that is already there, and I retain all my group settings, everything else. Hit next there again. And this is going to go through, and it's going to update any schema changes and so forth. A few things that we've done in this release, schema-wise, is we actually normalized a few areas and have been able to reduce the overall size of the data that we're retaining. So for some customers, that the database update step may take a little while, again, depending on the size of your database, but we've tried to optimize that as much as possible to keep it as quick as possible. So I finished the database portion. My database is now upgraded, and it's going to complete the rest of the install process. And that's complete. I'm going to go ahead and check the Launch Shavlik Protect button and click Finish. Launching here, the splash screen is probably going to be on my other monitor here, so it'll be just a second. While we wait for that, I'm going to go ahead and try to answer a couple more questions here that have been coming in. So a question from Luke: does version 9.0 run okay on a VM? Yes, Luke. We do actually a significant amount of our QA in virtual environments. And in this last go-around, actually both VMware and Hyper-V virtual environments were used during our QA process. So version 9 will run on a VM. Of course, the one time that I happen to show all this during a product demonstration is the one time that the launch doesn't happen immediately after my upgrade. There we go. All right, so I am upgraded to Shavlik Protect Advanced now. So the standard and advanced editions are still being, terminology-wise, are being used. When you upgrade, you should see standard or advanced, but the branding there has changed to Shavlik Protect instead of VMware vCenter Protect. Again, licensing-wise, I didn't have to go through and relicense the product or anything. If I go in here, I should see that my product is still fully licensed. My license key and everything is already in there, and if I go to Help About, I will see all my capabilities and everything should still be active. Again, back to the question about licensing, the 32 to 64-bit upgrade, again, should be seamless, should be like any of the previous upgrades that we've done, and should have as little intervention as possible for you in the process. So a couple other things as you upgrade. There's going to be a couple of cosmetic changes here that you can probably already see. We've maximized more of the real estate available for the main part of the product. Instead of a multi-tier set of toolbars up at the top here, we've consolidated everything down into more of an NGC-style user interface. The home button will bring you back to the operations page. We still have the ability to execute most actions against any of the groups you've got defined, all from the main start page. And then you've got the feed at the bottom here with all of the XML as it releases, so you can actually go through here and see historically the RSS feed for any data releases that have come out for the product. The navigation on the left, now you have a drop down here that has all of the different areas that you can switch between: machine groups, patch groups, and service pack groups, age of policies, templates, favorites, virtual inventory, and results. Virtual inventory is new. It's part of the new feature set around hypervisor patching, which we actually did demo on Tuesday. So that's a new area you'll see there. When you switch between things, you no longer see the Add New underneath this part of the UI. Now the Add New is all under the plus new. You can create any of the different objects all from wherever you are in the app just by clicking the new and selecting which type of thing you want to create. So if I happen to be under templates and I want to create a new machine group, I don't have to navigate to machine groups and then click on new machine group. I can go up to new machine group and it automatically goes straight to that. So a lot of these things have reduced, 1 to 2, maybe even 3 clicks in some cases on getting to where you want to go in the UI. Under View, close out of that real quick. Under View, we've got all the different views that we have had in the product. So the results view, the charts and graph view that we used to come to the home page of before, all of those things are available under here. The machine view, the patch view, thread events, IT script results. A new view here called Event History, which is also a new feature of 9.0, which shows a history of any events like the background tasks, data rollup, distribution server synchronization, data file downloads, another operation that's new in this version called Cloud Sync. All of those types of events will occur in the event history. So again, instead of having to switch between different things there, you can get to any view in the product either with the hotkeys or by switching into the view there. Manage is where you go to get all access to all the management components like the address book for email notifications, credential manager, the items for like database cleanup, if you want to manually clean up a bunch of old results, things like that. The script catalog, role-based administration, custom patches, and scheduled tasks, all of those are under Manage. And under Tools, you've got things like the console alias editor, create reports, custom patch editor, or run IT scripts against the console. The run disconnected has changed from run disconnected to auto update definitions being on or off. So that's just a terminology change and basically how you're flagging that, just so you know the difference there. And then we've also split tools options into tools options and tools operations. And the reason for that is, again, maximizing the real estate. A lot of the things that options-wise, you may ever only go in once and set it, like the log level or proxy config or different things in here regarding the Microsoft or Shavlik scheduler and so forth. You pretty much set those once and probably never change them again. The tools operations is where things like file downloads are located, which we actually enhance some of the scheduling options here and allow you to schedule things like core engines and definitions and thread engines and definitions separately on different schedules now as well. The email notifications, alerts, all of these things, data rollup, and actually I think there was a question on here before as well about where do you go to confirm if data rollup's configured. In this or the event history, you'd be able to see if data rollup's configured on a console or not. Distribution servers, database maintenance, and then the Protect Cloud Sync. These are all operations that will continue to run throughout the product and show up in the event history as well. So we've kind of created a home for all of these that gives more of a consistent user experience and flow that's separate from the tools options, which are more static configuration. So that's the bulk of the major changes to the product. There's a couple of other minor changes that I'll kind of point out here as well. The deployment templates, actually let me create a new deployment template. Have a couple of smaller usability changes. The distribution server tab. This used to be a checkbox to enable it. Instead of that, now we've kind of, for usability purposes, we've made this a radio button. If I've got a distribution server defined and I want to use that, I can click the radio button for that, which will enable the rest of the features there. Otherwise, I'm now clearly defining this as console push. Whenever I deploy using this template, patches will be pushed from the console to the target. So it's a little bit more user-friendly there as far as how that's set up. That's the bulk of the major changes that would probably throw anybody off. Everything else is either an enhancement to a feature where it hasn't changed but it's just added onto, or it's a brand new feature altogether. So at this point, I'm going to go through and I'm going to answer any other remaining questions there are. If you do have any other specific feature questions regarding the rest of the new features, I can come back to those in just a moment here. So the next question that was on the list here was from Mike. Being a previous VMware customer, will our current product require new licensing, or are we still good until the end of our current agreement? Great question, Mike. As with all of our product upgrades, we actually already went through and bulk updated our customer keys that are all active right now. There's no need for you to request new keys for this. When you upgrade, the new features will be made available to you automatically through the upgrade process. So in 8.02 version of the product, we actually changed the licensing service so that it checks in typically every 24 hours. It'll do a quick check-in with the licensing server to make sure that it's synchronized and any new features that have been enabled are turned on automatically. So that actually already took care of this. Everybody should automatically be able to upgrade to that. There's a specific case that could cause some people problems. We've had a couple people hit this already, and that's a matter of like some customers who still have a very old legacy key from back in the prior to VMware days under the Shavlik licensing. It's only been a handful of cases so far out of hundreds of upgrades, but there's a couple of cases where during the upgrade process you may receive a message that it basically you're using a V8 license key, which is a VMware license key, along with a legacy Shavlik key that are not compatible. That's the only case where you may have to contact support to get some help there. There have only been a few cases of that, and typically it's in cases where somebody had a very long license term and happened to buy new licenses under VMware as well. So they've got legacy keys that are really old along with newer keys as well. I don't foresee that being a problem for most people, though. The next question in the list is from Jeff. Oh, this is the one that I answered before. So Jeff was asking, is there a quick check to see if you're utilizing data rollup on the additional consoles? So there again, if you go to Tools, Operations, you can see if data rollup is configured there. Otherwise, if you go into View, Event History, oh, right, I wiped my database earlier today. Otherwise, you would have seen an event here for data rollup if that rollup is configured on that console. So those are a couple of ways that you can check each console to see if data rollup is configured there. The next question is from Tim. Tim is asking, if I have an external database server, can I just load a new console on a new server and retain my settings, info, etc.? Essentially not upgrading my console, just upgrading my database using the new console. Tim, you can absolutely do that. So the database stores all your groups, your templates, you know, all of that information is stored in there. The one thing that you may have to do, and you know, Tim, this is a really good question regarding you know, upgrading off of older platforms. You know, I know that 2003 and XP are both going to be end-of-lifing here in 2014. So the couple of things that we're working on in our fall release is coming up with some migration tools to allow customers who are on the older platforms to have a migration path that will account for more than just the data in the database. So Tim, a few of the things that you won't get by doing it that route is scheduled tasks, sync tasks like distribution service synchronization, database maintenance, things like that. You will have to go into your distribution server and basically reschedule the synchronization so the new console is synchronizing those, and you'll have to reset up scheduled tasks to account for any reoccurring jobs that you may have. If you're not using any of those features, though, absolutely, you can move over to Server 2012, which is now supported on the console side. Windows 8 is now supported as a console configuration. So for those of you who are running on older platforms, if you don't have any of those scheduled tasks, things like that that you want to move, you can just install on a new platform, connect to your remote database, and you'll be up and running. So like groups and templates will all be there, but in your groups, you'll have to go in and define your credential in there, because on the new console, your credentials from the other console are under that, they're encrypted by profile on that server, so the new server won't be able to utilize those. So there are some things that you'll have to reset up if you do that, but it is absolutely possible to do. So cat's out of the bag a little bit. A new feature that we are working on towards our fall release is getting migration tools in place to allow you to actually move from the older operating systems up to newer ones and basically install a new console. And we're still working out the details around how, but some type of tool where you'd be able to run it on both sides or run it from one side and point to the other, and it would move across all that configuration like scheduled tasks, distribution server syncs, all those things. Once you get done with the migration, then you turn off the old and you're on the new platform. Agents are another thing that you want to watch out for there. If your agents are checking in with the old server, you would have to, reinstall those agents on the new server. Otherwise, there's some manual effort you'd have to go through with the alias editor and certificates to be able to install the new console so that an existing agent could find its way to the new server and complete or actually check in and continue to work. So those are all things we're working on handling in a new release this fall to make it so we can help customers migrate off of those old platforms. Another question from Mike, is the webinar speaking on the new features available for download? Yes, Mike, that is available for download, and actually let's switch over to it real quick just to show everybody where it is. If you go to the main Shavlik.com website, on the same webinars page that you went to register for the current webinar, if you go out to the webinars and videos, recent webinars and videos, the May 21st recording is up here. You just click on view there. It's going to ask you for some data, and then you'll be able to view that within the window here. This way of reviewing the recent webinars is actually going to be going away as we transition into the LANDesk side. So I apologize for having to go through forms and everything here. In the long run, we're going to get into a new web environment where you're going to be able to get access to things like this a little bit easier. The video for that is sized down to the size of that box. If you increase the size, it does get a bit fuzzy, and I also apologize for that. The video that I recorded on full screen looks fine, but when you put it into the service that we use for this, when it streams across, it keeps it sized down for performance reasons to a much smaller effective size. But that video is available, and you can check that out there. Another question from Mike. I just recently renewed my license via VMware. Will I get my key from VMware or LANDesk? So Mike, everything is actually still processing out of the VMware side right now. The actual email address is probably going to be a Shavlik one. But while we continue to bridge the gap here process-wise, you can continue to contact us for anything that you may need through protect-help@shavlik.com, or if you contact renew@shavlik.com, sales@shavlik.com, or support@shavlik.com. All of those aliases are set up right now where they get to the VMware teams that are currently supporting it, and as we transition teams and staff over to the LANDesk side, we'll automatically switch those aliases over to try to give you a seamless support experience as well. So if you do have any questions about that, again, sales@Shavlik, support@Shavlik, renew@Shavlik, protect-help@Shavlik, any of those will get to the proper teams to support you throughout the transition between companies. Next question is from Jose. If we have a renewal coming up in June, who do we pay? For right now, contact renew@shavlik.com. During the process, you're actually still processing orders through VMware. This is part of the agreement that was reached during the acquisition, where VMware is processing everything until we get everything transitioned over to LANDesk. I won't really discuss the percentages and things like that, but let me just say that both companies are getting their due during that transition time. Last question that I have on the list, or actually there's a couple of chat questions here I'll get to as well, but the last question that I have right now is from Tim. Any new features to agents under version 9? Yes, Tim, actually there's a few different features specific to the agent in version 9. The biggest of them is the cloud agent feature. So what this is it gives you the ability to register your console in the Protect Cloud hosted infrastructure. And what this will do is it's going to act as a proxy or a gateway so that while your agents are outside of your network firewall, they're still able to update policy and return results. They can persist outside of your environment as long as you want at that point, and we'll continue to make sure and bridge that gap. Any engine updates or data file updates, patch downloads, everything of that sort comes directly from the vendors, all through just regular web traffic. The communication between the console and the cloud is all encrypted, and communication through the agent and cloud is also encrypted. There's a shared certificate that is used to communicate through there. All of the data is encrypted. The cloud does not have the ability to decrypt that data. So throughout the process, only the agent and the console are able to actually decrypt policy or results and actually utilize that data. The cloud does not know how to access any of that. All it does is act as a transport layer. So a very secure infrastructure for doing that. It's all hosted. There's nothing more you have to do other than going into Protect, and in Tools Operations, you would go to Protect Cloud Sync, and if you don't have an account yet, you would click here, and that will bring you to the Protect Cloud site where you'll be able to register an email account that you'll use to access that. Once you register through this form, you'll be able to come in here and define that account as your credential. So set up my account here. Save that and register. There we go. I now have a registered console. And once that's complete, I can go in and create, if I've got existing agent policies, all I have to do is go and update those. But there's an additional ticking here for syncing with the Protect Cloud. So you can choose which policies you want to be enabled for Cloud Sync. If you have a bunch of workstations and servers that are running the agent, and you don't want those, you're not going to ever sync those to the cloud, put them in a separate policy, put all your laptop users in here, or remote users that persist entirely outside the network in this bucket, and enable that policy to sync with the cloud. There's actually a way to install an agent completely outside of your network. There's instructions in the help system, and I also went through it in that webinar on Tuesday on how to do a completely cloud installed agent that never sees the console but is still able to receive policy updates and return results. So that's one of the new features there. For our advanced customers, a couple other things that we've done there is we've upgraded the threat engine to the latest Viper engine 6.1, and we've also added a couple of right-click actions to the threat view and quarantine where you can automatically add detected threats to the allowed list if it's something you want to allow through your environment. So things like low-risk software and adware that might be in your environment, something like WeatherBug you may want to allow, or VNC. It's a remote tool that sometimes people want to avoid, other people want to allow it. So you can add those to your detected threats list or add them to your allowed list by right-click from some convenient locations. Let's see if I have any other questions at this point. Looks like Angel had a question here. Can you elaborate a little more about the cloud features? So Angel, I think I just touched on a little bit of that there. So the cloud feature is geared towards extending support of the agent outside your network perimeter. So a lot of companies, whether you be an MSP that's trying to reach smaller customers that don't have a VPN that you can get through and you don't want to set up a console in their environment, you can actually enable a cloud agent there. Using the cloud agent feature, you can actually create what's called a provisional agent key. That provisional key is something that the cloud service understands. When you do the install of the agent in that remote customer environment, it can't see the console yet. So you register the console with that provisional key. It's able to then talk to the cloud and says, okay, I've got this provisional agent that wants to install. Next time that console checks in, the cloud says, here, I've got this for you. Can you validate this agent for me? And the console comes back saying, yes, it's a validated agent. Here's what policy it belongs to. Or no, reject that one. And then through about a 10 to 15-minute process back and forth, that agent will become fully registered, have a policy, and be fully operational in that remote environment without ever seeing the console directly. And then from that point forward, again, since your agent can't see the console, it's going to get policy updates through the cloud, pass results through the cloud, get any engine updates, data updates through xml.shavlik.com, and get any patches or service packs it needs to install directly from Microsoft, Adobe, Java, all those different vendors that we support. So a very seamless way to bring agent support anywhere that you need to be. Next question, may I know the scheduled task time interval? And I apologize if I mispronounced this, but Senthil Kumar, depending on what you're asking about, there's a couple of things that we added in this release. So for core engines and downloads, you can actually go in here and add a schedule. That allows you to pick, a run once task, run it hourly, every so many hours, or reoccurring on a daily or monthly schedule, much more similar to how we do our agentless scheduling. So that's how you can schedule these definition and engine downloads. The distribution servers, very similar. So we've expanded this now so distribution servers can actually break down into 3 different sync processes or a single sync process for all 3. When you add one of those, and none of this is really valid data here, but it will allow me to at least show the scheduling option. When I choose to schedule this, I'm going to add a scheduled sync, and I have, again, the same type of scheduling flexibility there. When I save that, then my job is now listed down here, showing me everything in a nice single view, what the name of it is, what type of synchronization, the next time it's going to run, reoccurrence pattern, sync source, all of that information is available to me here. So it's much more flexible, lets you go through and be much more granular with your distribution server synchronization. Hopefully that covers the question that you had there. If not, let me know. So another question, again from the same gentleman. This was another new feature that was added in 9.0. The end-of-life data that we now collect and display is going to show you, do a scan of my local machine here real quick. So we now include end-of-life data in our products. So if we scan your machine and we detect products installed that have already reached an end of life from the vendor, we're going to make that information available to you now. So you'll actually see a count of how many products have the end of life here at a machine level, and if you get into the patch level, there's a column for it showing the exact date that the version of that product was end of life. So when I get the scan result back here, I'll show you a little bit more of the granularity there. Question from Eric, does Cloud Protect cost extra? So Eric, actually the 2 major features of Protect 9.0, the VMware ESXi hypervisor patching and the Cloud Agent feature are included for all customers. So standard and advanced customers When you upgrade, you've got availability of both of those features without any additional cost. And another question from Luke. Do credential changes now flow to scheduled tasks? In the past, when I updated my credential password, I had to recreate my scheduled jobs. Yes, Luke, that should have been that was a bug that should have been resolved in there. In fact, I'm 99% sure that that was one of the defects that was resolved, but this was a rather large release, and there's a bug list that's like, 50-some long that were resolved in this release. So I'd have to go and look through there to see exactly where it is, but yes, that should have been resolved with this release. If for any reason that does not seem to be the behavior, please check in with support as soon as possible so we can make sure that we investigate that. But it should have been resolved by this release. All right. Oh, and I don't have an end-of-life product on this machine. Apparently, I updated everything else. I had a couple of older ones on here, but I just had a patch scan deploy recently, and it got rid of them all. So let me go and show you at least where this data would be located. If you go into scan result, you'll see the end-of-life products at a high-level count up here. In this case, I've got 0. If I were looking at the informational items, you would see if there's an end-of-life date, it should be represented there. If it's at a patch level, so like if Skype were end-of-life, you would see the end-of-life date there. And this is giving you more information about your environment, trying to help keep you up to date on potential threats. So if a vendor, actually let's take a Microsoft case. Microsoft is end-of-lifing the Communicator product and moving everybody over to Microsoft Link. So Communicator 2011 and 2012. 2011 is already end-of-life. 2012 actually just received a security patch this last patch Tuesday, but they're slowly transitioning everybody over, and I'm guaranteeing they're going to be stopping support for that very shortly. Those, once they're end-of-life, would have a date in there as well if you're running those products. Older versions of Firefox or Adobe products or other things like that, as soon as we have an end-of-life date for those, we'll update those as well, and that content will feed in here so you can visualize that and be able to see that in product. Let me see here. Question from Tiffany. Can you quickly do the database maintenance? Yeah, let me go and go through that interface real quick. So Tools, Operations, Database Maintenance. If you enable this, or you're basically enabling weekly database maintenance, we're going to go through and, based on what day and time you choose, you can tell us to keep a maximum number of results or keep results based on an older, anything older than a certain number of days would get removed. If you enable both, then it's going to take the lesser of the two values. So if I choose 100 days or 90 days old, it's going to go through and evaluate this and say, okay, I'm going to keep anything that's 90 days or less, and I'm keeping the most recent 100. So if I've got 101 results under 90 days, it's going to get rid of the oldest of those 101, getting me down to 100. So it's going on the least rule for those two rules combined. But now I can enable this and change those values. So maybe I only want to keep one asset result, and maybe, or I'm sorry, the minimum is 10 there apparently. Maybe I want to keep 200 patch results, or maybe for patch I want to keep 365 days worth, but not a certain number of results. So based on your needs, you can set that up. You can also do the rebuild indexes and tell it to back up the database as well. So this needs to be a path that, a UNC path or a local path on the machine if you're running a local database to where those backups will be stored. If you're running a remote database and a full SQL edition, it's probably better off to set up the SQL maintenance through the full SQL server. It's got some more robust features there, but this primarily was geared towards Express Edition customers to help them maintain their database as well, because the maintenance tooling in there is a little bit more manual setup. and a lot more command line involved. So hopefully that answers your question, Tiffany. Let me look through here and make sure everybody got everybody accounted for. It looks like I've answered all chat and questions that are in there. Oh, so Tiffany had one follow-up question. How often do I need to do this? Again, that's more of a kind of situation dependent. The maintenance that you set up in here is going to be on a weekly basis. The rules that you set up are geared more towards what do you need to retain in your environment. You know, obviously, if you're in the finance industry, or you've got HIPAA requirements or PCI requirements, things like that, you are probably going to have to retain at least patch data out long enough to cover your compliance requirements. If it's just a size issue and you really don't care about keeping much more than maybe the last like 90 days, I would say reduce the amount of data you've got in there, as much as possible, because it keeps your database leaner. It makes it so that when you bring up interfaces like the machine view or results views, things like that, the less data in the database, the faster the console will respond UI-wise. We set this up to run weekly. If you set it up outside of our product through the full SQL maintenance environment, I would say probably run at least monthly maintenance. And as always, I always ask that if you've got a DBA on site, defer to their maintenance schedule, because they'll probably be even more restrictive than I am on cleaning things up and maintaining size and things like that. Hopefully that answers your question there. Real quick here, just in case any other questions come in, I'm going to switch over to my slide deck once more just to cover a couple more things. We kind of already went through the Q&A, so I'm going to switch back over here. I already pointed out where the online documentation was, training videos. So videos on all the new features and updated videos for the existing features are all available online as well. You can get to the video on-demand training on the main page. So here's our online documentation link. Here's the on-demand videos. So from here you can see we've got all the basic videos, and then we're going to be constantly adding additional features as well, but you'll have the Protect Cloud and Hypervisor and vCenter server videos are up here as well. So the webinar playback is going to go into a lot more depth on the entire release. If you want to know about one or two of these specific features, I recommend going into the on-demand training videos. This is going to cover that feature end-to-end with a lot more detail, and the videos are a little bit more high-res. So it's going to be a much better experience to visualize it through here. If you combine this full set, it's going to run longer than my webinar last week, last Tuesday, which was a little over an hour total. But it's a good set of videos to work with there. Okay, it looks like we've got all questions answered. The only other thing in the slide deck is upcoming webinars. The next webinars that we've got currently scheduled is the June Patch Tuesday webinar. So those of you who are not familiar, the Patch Tuesday webinar is a webinar that we've actually been running for quite a significantly long time here, for several years. And what we do with that webinar is we cover, Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, and more importantly, what else is going on Patch Tuesday. Because a lot of the third-party vendors now are on board with the Microsoft patching. They're going to be releasing at the same time. In fact, for those of you who saw the announcement come out or actually caught this, the May Patch Tuesday webinar, the third-party vendors pretty much doubled the number of bulletins and even more than doubled the number of vulnerabilities being plugged this last Patch Tuesday. So you had updates from Microsoft, 9 of them which were released into our product, and also Adobe, Firefox, Chrome, Skype, many other products that updated from third-party vendors as well. So it's a very informative webinar. We cover it the day after Patch Tuesday, so the Wednesday after Patch Tuesday. We go through the Microsoft release, the third-party releases, and then we actually talk a little bit about everything that released in between. So any notables like a zero-day exploit, this last time around the IE8 got a few additional slides of its own in that last presentation just because it was such a notable concern. So there was a lot more specifics around that particular bulletin than any other in that Patch Tuesday webinar. But we'll cover a lot of detail about the different vulnerabilities, the things you should prioritize, resources available to keep you in touch with what's coming out through our products. So thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Again, if you have any additional questions that you didn't get to today, if you remember it right after we get off the phone, anything like that, go ahead and send an email to protect-help@shavlik.com, and we'll respond to those as quickly as possible. A recorded version of this presentation will be available on the webinars page as soon as I get the video converted and over to our web team to upload. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the June Patch Tuesday webinar.